Whenever Minecraft releases a brand new update, they also release a changelog to let you know exactly what was inside of it, and one look at the changelogs for 1.21 on Bedrock and Java will reveal there is a huge difference between the size of the two updates, and despite the claims of parity, the truth is that there are always two very different updates releasing for two very different platforms, and so it's worth sharing exactly what is unique about Minecraft 1.21 on Java, because it has unique end spawn mechanics and piston sounds, and the mace has been substantially nerfed in a way that never came to Bedrock, while the Bedrock version of this update also has some unique features like this new bubble meter, and today I wanted to cover exactly what is unique about both of these. But first, a brief recap. This is obvious to some people who follow the channel and watch a lot of Bedrock, but since 1.16, updates have had the same version number and name and marketing between Bedrock and Java, and all of the features that make it into the trailer will generally be available on both versions. This is how we can say 1.21 is out now, and everyone knows that means they have access to the new copper bulbs and the trial chambers and the mace, but also, if you're on Java, that means there are lots of these features which you won't see anywhere else. And let's start with the simplest and easiest one, because pistons have a lower volume and attenuation. They tried some other piston sounds, but this new quieter one is unique to Java right now, and as you can see, it makes it very pleasant to be around loud redstone contraptions, because they're not loud redstone contraptions anymore. Speaking of loud redstone contraptions, here's something fun. You can now travel through portals while riding an entity. This has been one of the longest standing bugs for Minecraft on other platforms, and it's almost wild to see this finally be done. But here's me riding a minecart where the minecart rail suddenly goes into a portal, but me and the minecart just made it through where, wow, what is this? Hell's bells. Make sure that you hit those if you don't want to go to a bad place. But yeah, you can now go through a portal, which is a lot of fun. What do you think this is, by the way? Oh, back to the overworld. Well, that's one way to go back home and allow us to go back to the nether via an ender pearl. Look at that. I just ender pearled into the nether, and then I can use the nether to die again if I feel like it. But you know what else I can use to die again? The brand new witch drops, which are only on the Java edition. Witches will now always drop 4 to 8 redstone dust upon death. This is very different to the amount of redstone dust they drop on Bedrock, which is a rare drop and much rarer, and much fewer, I should say. And so this is basically a change designed to make redstone a little more accessible ahead of all these other features, but only on the Java edition. So here is my witch, and oh god, please don't kill me. I don't know how the Java combat works that well, but I just managed to kill her, and I got 7 redstone. That is impossible on Bedrock, and it means that the way you would get redstone genuinely might change for certain survival players, something important to keep in mind. So I'm just going to place this down as I move next on to these changes. These are really funny ones because the fire protection and blast protection were changes that were made in 1.21 that were reverted at the last minute, not because they weren't available on Bedrock, but instead because there was some last minute backlash from Java players, and they figured, you know what, we'll just deal with this later. And so soon you will be able to have fire resistance and blast protection, which will have a different effect. There is no explosion knockback resistance on Bedrock, but it will have a different effect based on which piece of gear you're wearing. But right now, this is one of those weird changes that they made and then unmade, so just keep in mind for now that fire protection and blast protection will be changing soon for Java, and then hopefully sooner or later for Bedrock. Speaking of sooner or later for Bedrock, here is a fun one. This is a Java 1.21 feature that's only not on Bedrock because it already was. I always forget about this, but you couldn't leash boats on the Java edition. If you've got medium-sized salmon, apparently the water physics work differently, and it means the boats just weren't able to be leaded. Even right now, it feels very different in my opinion. The lead is very, very, very different between Java and Bedrock, but it means that you will now be able to do something that is on Bedrock, and so the only reason this update is different is because they had to bring it up to parity. There's some fun versions of this in reverse to do with boats. You couldn't stand on boats on Bedrock, but now you can. But no, enough talk about Bedrock. Let's talk about one other fun Java feature. Upon entering the end, when the Obsidian platform regenerates, any blocks within the regenerated area are now dropped as items instead of being erased. So the end portal area used to just erase everything, because basically you always need to spawn somewhere in the end, and that somewhere is always an Obsidian platform, but all of the blocks that, as you can see, were placed here before will now break instead of just being overwritten, which is a huge, huge, huge change. I've actually seen this, this might seem like it's a silly change, like, well, don't place blocks here and it won't affect you, but I've seen, I think I saw this farm from Ray Works, where he did precisely that to farm cobblestone by continuously having entities go back and forth from the overworld to the end, and so if you want to, you can farm cobblestone automatically using this. I don't think cobblestone is a resource most people want to farm auto, but now you have the choice of doing that without sellotaping your mouse button or your controller trigger, which I think is really cool. You know what else I think is really cool? Jumping off the end and going back to the overworld. Wow, you can fall a lot further down on Java. Another fun difference. There's like a cap under the world at y-4 on Bedrock. Speaking of caps, let's talk about a cap to new commands. You know, it's not a cap, but you know, I wanted the segue to work. So we'll just pretend that makes sense, and we'll say that these are some other changes they made. They are new attributes that you can use with commands only on Java. Commands are very different between Java and Bedrock, and so too are books, it should be mentioned. Harrison, it looks like he had a very fun difference here. But here's a fun thing. This book, which is 3 pages, takes up 3 pages on Java, but you can show 3 pages in 2 pages on Bedrock because you get to see twice as many at the same time. Why is that true, and why does it let me take the book? Well, we actually wrote the answer to this in a book over here, so this book has all of the answers that you should... Oh, never mind. Anyway, so with that said, let's now move on to the other just tiny little changes that are hard to show off. There is a new @n target selector, so you can do /tp and then @n, the nearest entity. That's really cool and handy in my opinion. There are data-driven paintings, enchantments, and jukebox songs. To some people, this is the biggest thing, so I couldn't not mention it. Data-driven means that you can now set these things via your own stuff if you want to, and there are 8 new advancements. This is really, really interesting, and you'll see why when we come to Bedrock, but this is the fun facts. These are the fun new features which are only available in Java, and you might be saying, wait, it's only this many? So Kat, the changelog was like 3 times as long. What's gone wrong there? And the answer to that is that most of these individual lines on the changelog more or less came down to new commands and more or less came down to data-driven everything. They are making, they make the pack slightly more advanced every single time, but it makes up huge sections of a changelog, which are massive to some players, but I'll be honest, most survival players, 98% of Minecraft players, I would wager, have no idea what that is and do not care, and if they did know, they still might not. And so, with that said, I think it's important to note, why is this update different from Java to Bedrock? Before we move on to the Bedrock exclusives, why is it that this could even happen? The simplest answer comes down to, like I briefly alluded at here earlier, there is a point in the Bedrock update cycle where they have to freeze the features. And that's not because they want to, it's not trying to fix bugs, they have to still have that, they have to have weeks worth of time just fixing bugs there, but also, at the same time, it's very crucial that Bedrock updates are finished about 3 weeks before they go live. It can be as little as a week and a half or as much as 3.5 weeks, but there is a period of time somewhere between 2 to 3 weeks basically, where Minecraft Bedrock cannot add features to an update because the platforms are certifying it. If you ever download an app from the App Store, if you ever download a game or play a physical game, that update will have been certified not to break your device. This is something which is very important so that you're not playing a random PlayStation game and it deletes your save files for all the other ones. And so this certification is something which almost every platform does that Minecraft Bedrock is on. Minecraft Java launches with its own launcher, and so if it happened to delete your System32, that would be a problem which they'd hopefully catch before it went live, but it's up to them to certify themselves, which means that Java can work right up until the day before release. These features were being toyed with literally 3 days ago, whereas the Bedrock version couldn't have toyed with them, or when they make these same toy changes, they have to make it for the next update. And so a couple of these features, notably this one right here, will be coming to Bedrock, but the other ones are more like, yeah, they're small things, so they just aren't worried about parity because Bedrock's busy dealing with the next update, which is why the games are getting further and further apart, even while Microsoft and while Mojang are directly talking about how there's parity that is coming between versions. With that said though, let's talk about Bedrock now. You think I'll survive this fall? Oh. Didn't need the apple. Just like how you didn't need to know all of the Bedrock exclusive features in this update, but I think it's handy to know regardless. A lot of these are parity related, but one of these is just a fun new feature in its own right. You can now permanently see your days played in the top left via its setting toggles. This is something which sort of exists on Java. You can see your coordinates and you can see your days played, but it's via the F3 menu, which is a debug menu. It shows a lot of other information which you might not necessarily want to see, and which, again, a lot of players would agree you're probably not meant to see, and Minecraft developers feel the same, but now you can see that, and if you play on a keyboard and mouse, you can press F8, and you can move it to the top left. Do you want to do that? It's up to you. I think this is a more logical place for it, but I just feel like here is right, but just because of the paper doll thing. Is getting rid of the paper doll what F8 does? Yeah, that's what it is. I like the paper doll on the top right. I could argue that maybe the paper doll should go below that, but that's an argument for a different time. You know what else is an argument for a different time? The fact that there are 3 very important parity features. One of these is TNT. This now drops 100% of the items that that it kills, well, I mean 100% of the blocks that it destroys. Sorry, we're not getting a chicken spawn egg from that, but as you can see, this is a wonderfully cool feature that you can choose to turn on and get 100%. It makes patching up creeper holes, or I guess patching up TNT holes a bit easier. It doesn't actually apply to creepers. Also, you can now stand on boats. This is kind of wonderful. And also, the splash potions will give the same amount of duration as a regular potion. So whether you choose to throw a splash potion on your head or drink a potion, you'll get the same length of time regardless. This is a really useful change because I feel like splash potions already have that downgrade from not always being perfectly on your head. And so I think that's a fairly decent balancing point because splash potions are harder to get, so should at least be the same length as the regular ones. Finally, we have the other small changes, such as they changed mob spawning from being on the corner of the block to the center, and also when you go underwater, you get this new bubble meter, which I just like a little bit better. It's a small change, but as you can see, now it is visible how much bubbles you should have, and it kind of raises the urgency that 2 out of 10 is a lot worse than just 2 in general. Also, when you run out of them entirely, there's this. Just a little reminder about why you're drowning on screen at all times. Kind of handy. It represents the 4th meter that you can have on screen at a given point in time, plus a 5th, I guess, if you include the jump horse bar. But yeah, this is something which represents the last of the major exclusive features. There are technically new API things for add-on makers, and there's all sorts of other things that might affect you, such as looting is less effective against equipment drops from certain mobs. But in general, most of the features that came to Bedrock that weren't on Java were just there because they were already on the Java edition, which represents a bit of a problem because I've just named 3 features which weren't on Bedrock but were on Java, which have now been added to Bedrock for parity. Oh heck yeah, honestly, I used to hate seeing these guys for their banners. I'd kill them because I was collecting them, but now getting an ominous bottle makes this actually a very desirable thing. Look at that, just got Bad Omen 4 in the middle of a video. Love that for me. But yeah, one of the interesting things about this is the parity is a moving target, and this is not just a problem because Java added 8 unique features while Bedrock added 3 of Java's old unique features, but also because of the fact that when they add new features, they're fundamentally adding different features to each version, and that sounds dramatic, but consider the case of the Mace. Oh, I have to switch to keyboard and mouse when I play Java, it's the worst. The Mace on Java is quite different to that of the Mace on Bedrock, and the biggest way is not the purple name, although this is something worth mentioning. Java has lots of different fun colors, but also the fact that it has this really slow cooldown time. It has one of the slowest cooldown speeds. It's 0.6 attack speed. That is slower than an axe, which is already substantially slower than a sword. You can attack about 3 times slower with a mace than you can with a sword, which is kind of crazy given that a sword does more base damage. The Mace on Java is a very niche weapon that can be used once and then has a huge cooldown to be used again. Look at that. Seriously, like hit, and then hit, and then, you know, the fact that you have to time it like that makes it a substantially less powerful weapon than on Bedrock. You might say that this is just like, well, isn't this actually just the same feature but for a different combat system? Aren't you actually complaining about the combat system again? But no, actually, bringing in the Mace with the same damage and the same every characteristic, but with a slower attack speed, actually is a substantial nerf to it, or at least a substantial difference. And to prove that point, let me show you the sword and the axe. This is a diamond sword, and this is a diamond axe on the Java edition. When they slowed down the diamond axe to 1 attack speed from the same that it used to be, which was the sword, they increased its damage up to 9. In other words, the diamond axe on Bedrock is weaker than the diamond sword on Bedrock because they have the same attack speed, but when you lower the attack speed, you increase the attack damage from 7 to 9 in this case, meaning the diamond axe does more damage, but not more damage per second. That is meant to be the balancing fact there. So consider the case of the Mace, where it has 0.6 attack speed, but still has the same attack damage, which again, 3 times as slow. To balance out the DPS, the Mace should have 3 times as much damage, or at least more damage than a sword, because it attacks substantially slower, but it does not have precisely that, and so that means that the Mace is this incredible weapon on Bedrock. I had a really great time killing the dragon with it, but at the same time as being a great weapon on Bedrock, it's a very niche and situational weapon on Java, because they didn't balance the attack speed and attack damage for Java, or rather they did balance it for Java, and then on Bedrock they just considered that it can have the same speed as every other weapon, making it substantially more powerful than it should be on Bedrock, or substantially less powerful than it should be on Java. If you're going to reduce the speed substantially, which is what they decided to do, you should increase the damage, but funnily enough, they did the opposite. When they reduced the speed, they actually decreased the damage at the same time. 6 attack damage feels incredibly low, if you ask me, and it means that this is a weapon that you have one chance to hit with. By the way, that does also change. If you're trying to hit a mob, let's pretend the copper is a mob, because there's none others around here. If you're trying to hit a particular mob and you attack too early, you know that second attack definitely won't hit. Whereas on Bedrock, you can kind of spam on the way down, making it even more powerful for its one very situational use, as well as extra powerful for the accidental, you just need to get enemies away from you, or you're trying to use it with the Breach enchantment, which goes through armor. Either way, Minecraft is trying to bring the two games into parity, and they're not necessarily getting any closer. Maybe you could argue they're not getting as far away, but the big question I want to conclude today's video with is, does it actually matter? I think that my instinct is, yes, true parity should mean that it doesn't matter which version of the game you're playing. Right now, the opposite is very true. Depending on which features you want, whether they're very big or very small, it actually matters a lot. If you want to play Minecraft with a combat system that has cooldowns and a second hand, very crucially, you have to play Java. If you want to have coordinates and days played and better render distances, you have to play Bedrock. For some reason, the Java edition, you need to install mods if you want higher render distances, even though almost everyone does it. Why can't that be in the base game? There are all these very big questions about what the major features you want from a game are. If you want to have redstone that makes sense, then play a version of the game that will get me in trouble if I say the actual answer. But the point here is to say that there are huge differences that actually affect which version you should be playing, and so really it seems as though with these updates, they get a huge focus on making sure all of the medium-sized features are exactly the same between platforms, all of the major ones that they're advertising, and this is great for the sake of marketing. But as far as the big and the small features are concerned, there are always and seem to be continuously adding new differences. How you create a world is vastly different, and the options that you have, how you type a command and what you can do with those commands, also vastly different. And you know, I need to take a second to say, why is summoning a dragon like this on Java? What is she doing? Why is there no boss bot? I have so many questions, but the point is that this is going to be the common experience for anyone who consumes media or watches someone play or just plays themselves across more than one edition, because there are very vast differences that only are sewn together by the common experience of all of the stuff in between. I think that true parity is a very nice marketing slogan, but it doesn't seem to actually be the end goal, because Minecraft, Bedrock, and Java are fundamentally developed differently. Java has this 3-week period before an update comes out where they can develop features and Bedrock can't, and Bedrock has a update system where they release updates every month or two, meaning that by the time Java hits 1.20.5, Bedrock has 1.20.80, that's its 8th major update, although one of those major updates went missing, and also there's a lot of minor updates, so it's actually like the 16th up. If you were to equalize it, it'd be like 1.20.16, but honestly, keeping track of Bedrock updates is like Elon Musk trying to keep track of his children. There's just too many to really make a decent attempt at it, so let's just say there are lots more, and so that update system and the fact that they come out at different times with different end dates, and they have fundamentally different architectures for different platforms, I think at some point you have to say that true parity isn't possible, so what should you be allowing developers to do? I think it's a very good thing that they give Java the free roam to add these new features that they've added, and I also think it's a good thing that they give Bedrock the ability to work on some parity, while also not necessarily guaranteeing that a feature has to come to Java to come to Bedrock. But at the same time, I think these rules should be made more clear and at the very least public, so that we, the community, can know, should we ever expect custom superflats on Bedrock? We in the community should probably know, are there plans to equalize combat? Because a lot of Java players might genuinely like the idea of playing Bedrock, but just because it has the old and in their mind better style combat, and similarly, a lot of Bedrock players might like to know, when are we getting any combat changes, if at all? If the plans are abandoned, then that's okay, but let us know. If they are going to be adding the combat from Java to Bedrock, then why wouldn't they do so right now in an update they just released that was entirely combat focused? They could have added any of the Java edition combat features or any of the proposed future Java combat features from the combat update v2. They could have done any of that or told us their plans for any of that, but they didn't. As Bedrock players, we should know, do they intend to add new and improved custom super flat features from the Java edition to Bedrock and amplifieds and stuff like that. I would love if we had an update. Something that I will say a lot is I make a map called Ultra Flat Survival, which fixes a lot of the problems with super flat on Bedrock, but I would love if they made that obsolete. I would love if Minecraft just introduced all of those features to the game, and I would love if they would just communicate with us where their lines are on parity, where the things that they hope to achieve are and aren't, because right now we just have to work it out from a series of different public statements from different departments, and it feels like something this big should be coordinated, but that is my take personally. I think it's important to know. I think that openness and honesty is something that's important, but that's something I guess you probably know if you subscribe to this channel. It's something that I hope that you agree with too, and if it is, then I hope that you have a good day, and I hope that you enjoy these videos letting you know exactly what's different between the two platforms, because I couldn't find this content anywhere else on the internet, so I decided to go through and get this made today. Hopefully you appreciate it. If you do, let me know over subscribe, and if you don't, then sorry about that, I guess. Maybe if you enjoy watching content that you don't enjoy, you might prefer watching my live streams. It's been like Streamless, but for the Tricky Trials update. I've been streaming every single day for quite a few hours. Maybe you'll enjoy some of those. Today we're going to finally get my hands on Windburst in my survival world, and then tomorrow I'll be back at destroying the Tricky Trial Chambers. Gonna be a lot of fun. Looking forward to seeing you there. Or not. Goodbye.